In the last lecture video, I discussed there the general differences between a quantitative research and a qualitative research. So again, I suggest if you have not seen that video, panoorin nyo muna before you watch this video. Because in this video, I am going to dig deeper into quantitative research and qualitative research and give you specific examples how these kinds of researches work. So for today, I am going to focus more on the quantitative methods. Remember, in the previous video, I gave you some words that are very connected to quantitative research. Nandiyan yung mga salitang quantify, measure, frequency, computation, statistically analyze. All these words we frequently use in quantitative methods. And again, in quantitative research, we ask research questions that start with how much or how strong, 'di ba? So kapag yung research na pinag-uusapan natin, when its goal is to measure how much or how strong a relationship is between certain psychological variables, it is more likely to be a quantitative research. So, bigyan ko kayo ng mga examples of research questions that are under the quantitative methods. Like, for example, how much related is a couple's intimacy and their happiness level in their relationship? Diba? Yung salitang how much related. So, it will require you to measure the connection, the strength of the connection between intimacy and their happiness level. So in answering this kind of question, it will require you to quantify or susukatin mo yung intimacy ng couple and at the same time their level of happiness. The second question, is it true that frequency of prayer lowers a person's anxiety? So you are going to measure here the level of a person's anxiety in relation to how frequent a person prays. Totoo nga ba na kapag dasal ka ng dasal, mas bumababa yung level of anxiety mo? So these kinds of questions will require you to do a research under quantitative method. Okay, so as you will see in the next lecture video, we will ask different questions when we are now dealing with qualitative methods. Just to refresh your memory, under quantitative methods, it includes the following methods. Pwede kang mag-psychological experiment, survey research, correlational research, or twin studies. In twin studies, basically, we try to compute the heritability estimates of a certain attribute. No, it's a very technical term. Wala na tayong time para pag-usapan yan, but basically, we estimate how or we estimate what is the percentage that a certain psychological trait is contributed by nature or genes. Nako-quantify yan. We can estimate how much percent is genetic, how much percent is environmental for a certain psychological trait. We use twin studies. So these are the following methods that we are using every time we are dealing with quantitative research questions. Now, for our purposes, I will just focus more in this video psychological experiments. I'm going to demonstrate to you how psychological experiments can give us answers when it comes to quantitative questions. Okay, let me present to you a psychological project or an experimental psychology project that was presented to me by my former students. So yung question na sinagot nila in this research is a quantitative question. Based on the title pa lang, no, malalaman nyo na that it's a quantitative question. They would like to know how fear quantitatively influences classroom learning. So the title of their research is Fear Impairs Learning Retrieval in a Classroom Setting. So paano to naging quantitative? Let's discuss. In this research question, they used experiment. Okay? As you know, in experimental psychology, I'm sure you already passed that subject, kaya kayo nandito sa subject na ito, di ba? It will require you to have variables, independent variables, and the dependent variable. So the independent variable in this study, or what they think affects another variable, is negative emotions, specifically fear, disgust, sadness, anger, and a control group. So alam nyo na naman to, no? In experimental psychology, kinakailangan meron kang independent variable. So yung independent variable nila are the different negative emotions plus a group that does not feel, or that has the absence of any negative emotions. While the dependent variable in this study is classroom learning. And how do you operationally define classroom learning? Again, if you study experimental psychology, you need to operationally define your dependent variable, which means how are you going to measure your dependent variable. In this case, they think, or they measure the classroom learning through giving their participants a certain quiz from a lesson. Okay, so yun yung susukatin natin in this experiment. The dependent variable is classroom learning. How much did they learn from a certain lesson that they have taken? So again, in this experiment, we have one independent variable and another dependent variable. We would like to know if the independent variable affects the dependent variable. That is very quantitative. How much students learn. So the following are the procedures. No? They used 50 participants in this study. So kayo na lang bahala umintindi dito ng mga boxes kung ano nangyari, no? But the most important box that you need to understand here is how they manipulated the variables, no? Basically, the experimenters simply asked their participants to watch certain types of videos. May mga videos na nakakatakot yung napapanood, may mga videos na sad, may mga video na disgusting yung video, and nakakagalit or angry, nakaka-anger yung video na napanood. Okay, so those are the different IV levels. Again, I'm sure you already don't know these things. So basically, the researchers here would like to know how these different types of videos will affect their performance when they are taking a certain test that measures their memory. Okay? So, to make the long story short, we no longer have time to really dig into their study. I would like to present to you their results. Ano ba yung naging findings nila after they have done the procedures? And notice how results are reported in a quantitative research. You will see a lot of numbers, right? Kasi nga, dito sa experimental method, after you gather the dependent variable, what do you need to do? You need to statistically analyze the data, specifically inferential statistics. Again, I'm sure you already know the difference between descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. But regardless, whether you are using descriptive statistics or inferential statistics, these are both statistics. And when you use statistics, then you expect many numbers in the analysis, as you can see here on the screen. But the most important part, or the most important table that we need to look at in a quantitative research, is that part, the column na merong pangalang SIG, or significance. And what's the magic number in doing psychological research? 0.05. Any number here that you see that is less than 0.05 will tell you that that variable significantly affects the dependent variable. In this case, fear, sadness, disgust, and anger. Sino lang dito ang less than 0.05? Fear. Sadness, disgust, anger are greater than 0.05, which tells you that there are no significant effects of these emotions to learning. Only fear significantly affects quality of learning. Specifically, they learn less when they watch a video that made them fearful. So, ganun yung lumabas sa kanilang results, and so they discussed the results. Remember, in psychological research, after you get the results, you are required to discuss the results. And what does it mean to discuss the results? It means you are going to explain, you are going to justify why did you get those results. So we are going to talk more about the different parts of psychological research when we reach psychological research 2. But again, what are the possible reasons why you got what you got from the results that is being written in the discussion part of the psychological research? And just to give you an idea, how did they defend, how did they justify their results? Well, based on their research, the reason why fear impaired memory or impaired learning has something to do with how powerful fear is in getting our psychological energy from the rest of the brain. Because if you check the literature on fear as an emotion, do you know that it gets a lot of our mental resources. So every time that you're scared, for example, natatakot ka, guess what? A lot of your psychological resources are being dumped, are being allocated to that experience of fear. You know, every time you are fearful, tumataas yung level of attention mo, nagiging nagiging hyper vigilant ka, and that takes away a lot of your mental energy. And it has something to do with the parts of the brain, as you can see on the screen. What you need for learning are two parts of the brain, the hippocampus and the frontal lobe, right? So every time you are trying to learn something, you are using a lot of your hippocampus and your frontal lobe. But what's happening is when you are fearful, when you are scared, the energy that is supposed to be used by the hippocampus and the frontal lobe is not available, because all those mental energies are in the amygdala, which is the emotional center of the brain. So every time that you feel scared, your amygdala absorbs all mental resources that's in the first place needed by your hippocampus and your frontal lobe to study something. And so it makes sense why students are so hard, or why students find it hard to study when they are fearful, because the hippocampus and the frontal lobe are not getting enough mental resources. And the reason is those mental resources are being absorbed or are being allocated to the amygdala because it is scared. You see, that's how you discuss the ideas that you get from the results section. You explain why you got the results that you got. And so the application of their research is the following. Number one, the researchers recommended that students must be relaxed in a classroom setting. Again, if the brain feels any form of fear, if the students are scared in the first place, the learning will not be effective because the mental energy will be allocated to the amygdala, making the other parts of the brain deprived of that mental energy that it needs to learn something. And so as a teacher, for example, you are teaching students in a classroom, you need to have the ability to make students relax, to disregard any form of fear, so that the mental energy will be spread over the different parts of the brain, especially the parts of the brain that involves learning, hippocampus and the frontal lobe. And number two, the students also recommended in that study that it is not advisable for teachers to use fear as motivator, because as you know, there are certain teachers, hindi naman lahat, ginagamit nila yung fear to motivate students, diba? Tinatakot nila yung students na babagsak sila, or some teachers, they show that they're angry, they show that they are disappointed when students are not able to answer questions. That is not an effective way to motivate students, as their research is showing. Okay? Let me present to you another interesting quantitative study that used a quantitative method in answering this question. What do girls look for in a guy? Again, this study was done by a group that I handled before under experimental psychology. So basically, their question is, which type of guy would girls prefer to have a relationship with? Yan yung tinatanong nila, no? Anong klase ng lalaki ba yung hinahanap ng mga girls when it comes to having a relationship with this guy? So they use, again, experimental method to answer that question. Independent variable is type of guy, and we have 3 levels. Level 1, we have rich kid. Level 2, we have schoolboy. And level 3, we have party boy. So these are the types of guys. Kumbaga parang ito yung mga packaging nung guy. Yung packaging niya, rich siya. Yung packaging nung isang level is schoolboy siya or studious. Yung packaging nung pangatlong guy is he's happy-go-lucky, he's a party guy. And the dependent variable is ano yung sinusukat natin dito? We would like to measure how much attraction, how attracted girls are to these guys. They are so attracted that they would like to start a long-term relationship with this guy. So to make the long story short, the dependent variable here is we are going to measure how much a girl would like to have a long-term relationship with the following guys: rich kid, schoolboy, and party boy. So how did they do this study? Basically, they recruited a guy. One of their classmates, to play the rich kid, the schoolboy, and the party boy. So those are the 3 levels. Okay, so in this study, they simulated a date inside a classroom. Okay, so imagine niyo merong isang classroom, tapos that guy will wait for potential dates. Okay, so again, these dates are only simulated. Okay, so it will only run for, I think, 45 minutes. So the guy that they recruited will act like a rich kid. In another condition, he will act like a schoolboy. He's very studious. And in another condition, he will act like he is a party boy, talking about things like parties and social events. So we would like to know which of this type of packaging would girls like to have a long-term relationship with. Okay? So bakit ito naging quantitative method? Because we are measuring something here, which is our dependent variable. So this is the type of guy. Ito yung parang packaging nung guy under the rich kid condition. Ito naman yung itsura niya, schoolboy condition. Ito naman yung itsura niya, party boy condition. Okay? So the girls that they recruited in the study will have a quote-unquote date with this guy for 45 minutes. So nag-set up sila doon sa classroom ng parang garden date setting, no? Pero yung mga pagkain nila doon hindi yung talagang kinakain sa dates, no? It's more on parang finger foods. All right? Kasi mahirap namang mag-replicate talaga ng what's really happening in a typical date, ano? Anyway, so what were the results? The following are the results. Remember, this study is a quantitative research, therefore you expect to see many numbers in this research, and the following are the numbers. But the most important table that we are really after in doing experiments is none other than, again, the table that contains the words SIG or significance. And what is the magic number? 0.05. And as you can see here, meron bang resulta dito na nagbibigay sa atin ng value which is less than 0.05? The answer is there's none, which tells you if every variable has no less than 0.05 significance, it means that your IV does not affect your dependent variable. Walang epekto yung independent variable mo doon sa dependent variable mo. To make the long story short, it doesn't matter what kind of guy they are dating. most girls, according to the data, dito mo makikita yan, no? Most girls had low level of attraction to the guy that they were dating, regardless whether the guy was a party guy, whether the guy was a schoolboy, or whether the guy was a rich kid. So halos lahat ng girls na nakadate nung guy na ito, based on the results, is ayaw nilang magkaroon ng long-term relationship with these kinds of guys. As you can see here in level of attraction column, di ba? Yan yung dependent variable mo no? And as you can see, the level of attraction here across different types of guys, rich boy, schoolboy, party boy, are very low. 2.93, 2.60, 2.14. From, ito, posible kasing no? Possible to the highest of 5. So, in a scale of 1 to 5, 1 is the lowest, 5 is the highest. Halos lahat ng dependent variable nila dito, it's within the range of 2, which tells you again that there is a low level of attraction to the guy that they were dating. Kahit ano pa yung packaging ng guy, rich boy man yan, schoolboy man yan, party boy man yan, it seems like the girls in this study are not interested in having a long-term relationship with this guy. So that's the result. So again, how do we explain this? Sasabihin mo yan sa discussion part. And how did the group discuss, how did the group justify or explain the patterns of their quantitative results? Let me read to you what they have written. The researchers hypothesized that females would be more attracted to males who display financial stability over males who are flirty and studious. The results are not consistent with the hypothesis. Kasi before the experiment was done, the group was thinking that girls would be most attractive or would be mostly attracted to the guy when he packages himself as a rich boy. And why did they think that? Kasi yun yung nakalagay sa literature. Now, when they reviewed the literature on attraction, studies show that girls are more likely to be attracted to guys who show financial security. But it seems like in this study, kahit na financially secure yung guy as their date, it seems like mababa yung level of attraction that girls showed to that guy. And again, going back to their paper, they gave us 2 reasons. First reason has something to do with age. Maybe because the participants in this experiment are all college students. They are not yet working, they are not yet professionals. Most of these students are in the adolescent stage of their development. So maybe during adolescent stage, girls are not really looking for guys who are rich. They are not looking for guys who are studious. They are not looking for guys who are fun, who loves to go to parties. Maybe they're looking for a specific type of guy that was not experienced in the experiment. So that's one possible reason kung bakit mababa yung level of attraction nila doon sa nakadate nila in the experiment. The type of guy that they like, given their stage as adolescents, hindi na experience in the experiment. Number 2, another reason could be time. Maybe the simulated date did not work. Kasi 45 minutes lang, no? And if you think about it, a typical date that happens in real life setting goes beyond 45 minutes. So maybe the 45 minutes that they had to interact with each other, to collect data from each other, was not enough, that the attraction did not appear in the data. So, maybe kaya mabababa yung level of attraction that girls showed to the guy that they had a date with was because, again, maybe kulang yung oras sa date experience nila. You know? The interaction was not enough for 45 minutes. So, as they closed their paper, they recommended for the next researchers, especially for those who plan to replicate this study, sinabi nila doon na maybe the next time that this study will be done, 45 minutes must be extended to more than an hour and see what happens. Okay, so again, this is another example of a quantitative research. So to close this video, what happened in this video was that I presented to you two studies that used quantitative research method, specifically experiment. Again, in quantitative research method, we are asking specific questions and we answer those specific questions using statistical analysis, as I have shown you in this short video. Now, for your post-lecture assignment, ito yung gagawin nyo, no? Although I am going to upload an MS Word version of this, but let me just give you a specific instruction. Given the topic male and female attraction, I would like you to find quantitative researches that are done in that topic. Okay, so kahit anong research pa yan, basta quantitative and it's about male and female attraction, I would like you to collect those studies. Okay, find a study on male and female attraction, quantitative, that used psychological experiment, that used a survey research, and that used a correlational research. So that means you are going to submit to me 3 studies for this post-lecture assignment. 3 studies about male and female attraction. They only differ in what specific method the study used. So I am expecting you to give me 1 study that used experiment, another study that used survey, and another study that used correlation. So I am going to upload an MS Word version for this that you need to complete. Thank you for listening. Our next video will be about qualitative methods.